Hey, good morning. It's Paige Browning. It's Tuesday. This is Seattle Now. Students in Seattle are soaking in their last day of summer break today. School is here, and so is a whole new model for how to be in a classroom while the coronavirus continues its spread. We'll dig into how school is going to work this year and how kids who favor remote learning might fare. KUOW reporter Kate Walters is here to break it down for us. But first, let's get you caught up. Washington's politicians are taking notes from a former Republican governor on how to successfully welcome thousands of refugees to the state. In the 70s, after the Vietnam War, Governor Dan Evans put together a plan to resettle thousands of Southeast Asian refugees, where government and local organizations collaborated to offer housing, employment, and health care. King County Councilmember Reagan Dunn has proposed county legislation to welcome Afghans in a similar way. And the county's executive's office has said that they're committed to doing whatever they can to help, including repurposing county property to use for housing. There are a lot of overdue energy and water bills in Washington state, and state leaders are warning people now that they need to form a plan to pay them. An estimated 500,000 Washingtonians have overdue bills, according to utility operators. They haven't been shut off because there's a utility moratorium in place, but that's going to expire September 30th. State utility regulators say people having trouble paying bills need to contact their utility now to make a plan to keep the lights on. And with the new school year, teenagers can ride transit for free again. For the fourth year in a row, Seattle's public high school students can get a free, fully subsidized Orca card. And they're also available to income-eligible middle school students and college-aged kids enrolled in Seattle Promise. Well, the classrooms are prepped, lessons ready to go, and kids are just about to step foot into classrooms tomorrow in Seattle, some for the first time in more than a year. We're going back to school today on the show to get a handle on how it's going to work, COVID and Delta concerns, and more. KUOW's Kate Walters is here now for a first week orientation. Hey, Kate.
Hi, Paige.
So we're talking school, and I want to start with a pop quiz, basically a lightning round of questions about what school will be like in Seattle this year. You ready?
I am ready, although let's hope this goes better than the recurring nightmare I have about a math exam that I haven't studied for. Hoping I can answer these questions for you. Let's do it.
This one won't be a nightmare. It'll be an easy ease back into school.
All right.
So first question. Last year, students had the option to do either all remote school or do a hybrid schooling where they could go to the classroom a few hours or a few days a week. What does the schedule look like this year in Seattle?
Kids are back full-time in person this year. So we're talking 5 days a week. There's no hybrid option for Seattle public school students. And there is a small virtual schooling program for K through 5 students, but that is actually full now and there is a wait list.
Okay, next question. What social distancing is required in Seattle schools?
So they're looking at 3 feet between students in classrooms, 6 feet in common areas like hallways and cafeterias. That is the goal at least, but kids will be kids, so might take a little policing.
Will everyone be wearing masks?
Definitely. If people are abiding by the rules, there should be masks everywhere you look at all times.
Okay. Next, vaccines. There is a vaccine mandate for staff, I hear. How does that work?
Yeah, so all staff. We're talking teachers, coaches, bus drivers. Everyone has to be fully vaccinated by October 18th or face losing their job. There are some exemptions for genuine medical and religious reasons, but unlike other states, there is no test out option for folks here. So they cannot say, in lieu of a vaccine, I will get regularly tested.
And what about students? Is there a vaccine mandate for them?
No, there isn't, at least not right now. But several health professionals in the state say they think that it should be, and it definitely could be added in the future.
Okay, last one, Kate. Lunchtime, my favorite time at school. How is lunchtime going to work when they're supposed to be masked up?
Yeah, it's definitely going to look different than it has in the past. First of all, lunch is free for all students at SBS schools. They're going to be distanced during that time. They're trying not to face students towards one another. And they need to keep their mask on the side of their face and then pull it back up after every bite. So going to be an interesting lunchtime. there has been a push by some parents, because this is sort of the riskiest time with masks coming down, to have lunch outside across the board at all schools. And there's a little controversy around that, because obviously some schools have the space and resources for that and others don't. So lunchtime, I think, is definitely something to watch as we go into this year.
All right. Well, time's up on our lightning round. Nothing like a little back-to-school warm-up quiz. Thanks, Kate.
Yeah, how'd I do?
You did great. You passed.
Did I pass? Okay, cool.
So let's dig into a couple of these ideas, starting with virtual learning, or the lack of it. Lay out for me what the options are for parents who might want their kids to still go to school remotely.
Basically, there's this K-5 virtual learning pilot program that's now full. And there are other virtual options that the district is pointing families to if they want to go that route. But these are state-approved and free to SPS families. But the catch is that kids have to leave the district to join those programs. And if and when they re-enroll, they're not guaranteed a spot at their choice school.
So let me get this right. Your option basically is going to the school classroom full-time. There's no hybrid unless somehow you got into this pilot program that's now closed and you have to get on a wait list.
Right. And the pilot program is full-time. So the hybrid option has just sort of been taken off the table at this point in time.
I mean, this is really a leap back into social interaction and face-to-face learning for kids who, a lot of them, haven't done this full-time since 2020.
Yeah.
What is the feeling around the virtual options, or really the lack thereof? I know we've heard some backlash, right?
Yeah, we're hearing a lot from parents over this. And I think, a lot of what we're hearing is concern. The Delta variant has really changed the game, and there's a lot of concern around risks. So Amy Chaw has kids who are going into 3rd and 6th grade. And here's what she had to say.
I think to have an option for kids to remain enrolled in their current schools and to learn either fully remotely or through some kind of hybrid option until such time as they are fully vaccinated is what I think we need to keep kids safe with the Delta variant and cases increasing in Seattle and elsewhere.
So, Kate, this is a parent who is basically saying we want some more flexibility with schooling, at least in the short term. What is she worried about with school?
So she's worried about her kids' safety, right? Like a lot of people, but she's also worried about disruption.
Somebody is going to get sick, and kids are going to be in close contact with each other, and I'm afraid that grade levels or even entire schools are going to be shut down, and that everything is going to be disrupted much more than it needs to be. I mean, these kids need consistency, and they need a plan that's going to not just look good, before school starts, but that actually functions all the way through September and October and November and December.
So, some parents like Amy Chaw have been pushing the district to offer other learning options, at least until their kids who are young can get vaccinated. But not everyone is pushing for that. Not everyone thinks that option would work for them. Some parents need that in-person option because they've got to go to work. And others are also saying that, despite the risks, this sort of in-person learning environment is really necessary for kids, for their mental health. And that, together the schools and the families can make sure that students stay safe.
Okay. Well, I did hear Amy say somebody's going to get sick. Walk me through what happens if a kid gets sick.
First of all, if a student is exhibiting COVID symptoms at school, schools are going to have this sort of designated health room where they'll be sent while a parent or guardian is contacted. And so they'll be isolated and then sent home. And if there is a positive case, the school's going to report it to public health folks. And then the positive person, student or staff member, is going to have to quarantine. So SPS says they'll inform a family if there's a confirmed case in their kid's classroom, or if their kid's been exposed to someone who's tested positive, perhaps someone on the bus or in a lunch area, for example. If there's an outbreak, the district is going to work with public health officials to determine whether a classroom, a building, or an entire school needs to close down. And if that becomes necessary, there'll be a shift back to 100% virtual learning, right? So a lot of different things to take into account here. If it's just a single kid who's sent home, then the district is saying, their teacher's going to work with them to support their continued learning.
What I'm hearing from you, Kate, is there are just layers of protocols in place with the masking, vaccines, testing, if you have symptoms. It's complicated, it sounds like, but there's a reason Seattle kids will be back in the classroom. For one, state education officials have said they want to see this happen. But can you tell me what else you're hearing about the why of why we're going back to school? What's the argument?
Yeah, I've heard a couple of things in talking to folks. There is concern around learning loss from kids who were maybe not getting access that was quite as good as their peers or didn't have the resources, the internet access, things like that in this year and a bit of hybrid or virtual learning. And then the other thing that I've heard about is this real sort of push that this is necessary for mental health for kids. So Dr. Sarah Vora is a pediatric infectious disease doctor and also a parent. And here's what she had to say.
I'm a strong advocate of going back to school, despite all of the COVID risks. For me, having seen my kids for almost a year not being in any kind of school, being remote and being so isolated and lonely, frankly, and working in the hospital and seeing so many kids come in with mental health issues. I mean, it's just exploded. I think for their mental health, they really need to see their friends. They need to have some school. And so we just have to do everything else that we can to keep that as safe as possible.
Wow. I'm really hearing from her, Kate, that she's a pediatrician, but this is personal to her. I can hear it in her voice. But I also heard her using the word we in there and sort of referencing the community, that this is a communal responsibility. Is that the message you're getting?
Yeah, she definitely talked about the fact that, schools need to do a lot of things to keep kids safe. It's really important that they have good ventilation. It's really important that they enforce those mask mandates and make sure adults around the kids are vaccinated. But she also said that it goes beyond what happens in the schoolyard. And what is also important is that families make sure that they are not taking big risks and exposing their kids, who could then bring that back into the school and expose others. And, the school district is also putting out this message to families saying, listen, if your kid is sick, please keep them home. This is not the time to send them to school. If there's been a known exposure, please keep them home. And so there's this sort of sense that it is a collective effort to make sure that students stay safe in going back to school, despite the fact that with this very infectious variant, there likely will be cases at some point. They're basically saying, let's do all the mitigation that we can to keep folks safe.
Well, like everything in this pandemic, it really takes all of us. School is another example of that. So get your backpacks packed. School is back. KUOW's Kate Walters, thanks for educating us today. It is always a pleasure to chat with you.
Oh, and you too, Paige.
Thanks for listening to Seattle Now. Clare McGrane produced today's show. Our production team is Caroline Chamberlain Gomez, Jenny Cecil Moore, Diana Opong, Matt Martin, and Jason Pagano. And special thanks to KUOW reporters Eilish O'Neill and Noelle Gasca, who contributed reporting to this episode. Matt Jorgensen does our theme music. I'm Paige Browning. See you tomorrow.